Wendy Foster, Director, Engineering and Data Science at Shopify. Welcome to the Data Exchange podcast.
Thanks, Ben.
And Wendy is part of a team of people that I know at Shopify, and I've had a few folks at Shopify on the podcast because I've considered them one of these interesting companies at the intersection of machine learning, AI, and big data. So first of all, Wendy, data science at Shopify. Do you folks have like a consistent way of defining the data science role? Because the reason I ask this is in some places it's a bit confusing. There's data scientists who are really business analysts, and then there's data scientists who do modeling, and then maybe another kind of data scientist. So when I talk to someone at Shopify and I meet them and they say they're a data scientist, is there a consistent description?
Yes, but then I'll qualify that by saying that I don't think that there's a consistent understanding of data science like in the field. So that complicates I think things like in a different level, but yes. So at Shopify, we talk about data science as a full stack opportunity. So depending, the job of a data scientist at Shopify will look different depending on what parts of the organization they're in. If they're embedded with a product team or a business function, the balance of their work could look different. But holistically, data scientists participate in the end-to-end of their work. Every data scientist, no matter what business function they're located in, are responsible for building and productionizing the data models that feed into their work. So we don't have a throw over the fence mentality to data engineering. Pipeline ownership sits with data science, and their responsibilities again can look very different depending on where the function of their sit is. If they're embedded in product development teams, if I think about my own teams, just to narrow it down a bit, our data scientists both build our products because we build data products in my part of the organization. They contributed as well to our understanding of how our products are performing in the real world. So they move between those two registers pretty fluidly. And I think to great benefit, if you care about how your products work, you build better products. Yeah.
So the listeners of this episode will probably think, well, one, they have great data scientists because they're full stack. They can go all the way to production.
They are.
But then on the other hand, they'll also probably think, well, probably one advantage they have is they might have more mature platform in the sense that you know how in some companies, even if you want to go all the way to production, the platform is just not quite there. So you folks probably have the right tools for data scientists to really go all the way, right?
Yes. We have a very mature data platform organization. I know you got opportunity to chat with Azim last year. This makes our job on data science much, much easier, clearly, in terms of scheduling jobs and building pipelines for data science models. I know my response when I got to Shopify and saw what they had to support our work was delight and glee. I had never worked at an organization that supported the work of data science in the way that our data platform team does. And they both have multiple consumers, right? Data platform supports our developer system as well as our data science system. So it's exceptional. It makes us do our work much, much faster, and it makes it easy for us.
So to give our listeners a feel for data science at Shopify, so what are some of the manifestations? What are some of the success stories in terms of data science and its impact on data products? So what are some concrete use cases, for example?
Yeah, well, we'll be able to see them across our entire product suite, I would think, core platform, as well as the areas I work in. A clear one is that one of the groups that I work with, we built the merchant-facing analytics products that merchants use to understand and make decisions for their business. So we build an analytics product basis merchants. That's a really, really clear value where our
this
data
is like
scientists...
this is like a dashboard of some kind.
It's dashboards, reports, recommendations. It's like think of it as like an analytic ecosystem for merchant, like operational observability and decision making tools, right? So it does include dashboards and reports, and it also I guess it's more from where in the product excuse me, that it's embedded. So our analytics product is embedded in what we call admin home, and admin is the first place a merchant like goes to manage all aspects of its business, and clearly understanding how their business works is a big part of that. So our analytics products are both a singular kind of centralized experience, but as well we're embedded in some of their operational pages, and we call those in context analytics. So if you're a merchant and you're going into your product page to manage your products, or your inventory page to manage your inventory, we'll give you like a top line of key metrics that show you like opportunities to optimize like your workflow as you're doing your work. And then clearly the centralized space gives you a holistic perspective on your business, sales reporting, taxes, products, top products, things like that.
So Shopify is B2B, right? So right.
I would say like B2B is a part of it. I would say like it's merchant, or like the concept of like a merchant can be understood, I think, like in a nuanced way too.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying.
So what makes this data and this just having to work with so many merchants? So what makes this particularly challenging in your mind?
Scale and
so you must have also, Wendy, the notion of I'm a merchant, you're a merchant, you can't mix my data with yours, right? So there must so how do I know that you're not helping my competitor? In other words, so there's the equivalent of data privacy in the merchant world.
That's a really big topic to unpack, but for I would not want to like. I'm laughing because of like that's an entire hour of conversation we can have around how we approach data governance and data privacy for our organization. So,
but I imagine this is one of the main challenges, right?
It's a challenge of any organization that deals with like customer data. So clearly we have a data governance structure and how we like approach keeping merchant data protected is a big part of our mandate. From the perspective of like some of our data products, like I guess I'm not sure where you're going with like mixing data and helping other merchants, but
I guess there's the notion of there's the concept of kind of collaborative or federated learning, where, for example, maybe there's something that we share that you guys can use together, but you have to be careful somehow as to how you do that, right?
Well, I think like we as well as many other organizations like that are either piloting or exploring opportunities where integrated data is useful holistically back to our merchant base, have opt-in processes where merchants are explicitly agreeing to have like their data be leveraged for like a wider good. But most of our applications, like I can talk specifically about my area. When we're talking about like merchant facing analytics, they're not getting another merchant's report in their reporting space. They're getting data that is theirs, right?
Right. Yeah. But I imagine, for example, one advantage of of you folks, because you have a holistic perspective, is you can create, for example, a product taxonomy that's quite powerful, a classifier that's quite powerful, because basically you can see a lot of different kinds of, I guess, the equivalent of SKUs, right? So
but that's like independent of like the merchant, right? The merchants, like
but the merchants benefit from the fact that you folks see a lot of different SKUs, right?
Of course, as they should, right? So, and I wouldn't think of it as SKUs. We see like product description like data that is incredibly easy to like anonymize. And we, for our product classification model specifically, we're working with product images, both that are supplied by our merchants, but also that are available through like larger databases. So text and image holistically, like let us do a good job of building interventions, I would say, in merchant workflows where it's very, very toilsome. Like an example that product classification supports like explicitly is there's a part of a merchant like workflow where I won't say they're required, but they have the option to include a product type. Why is product type useful? It's useful for omni-channel selling, right? So if you have a standard product type that a taxonomy like Google or Facebook accepts, it just makes it far easier to like export those types to other marketplaces that you're interested in. So one way we leverage product classification is to infer a standard product type. Our merchants get a chance to see that, accept it, or supply a custom type, which would just create extra work in their workflow for them at a later stage. Yeah.
So is there also, Wendy, the notion of, I'm not sure if this actually, I don't know enough detail about Shopify, but is there also a notion of a kind of a global or more powerful fraud model? Fraud detection model that, do you guys build that for your merchants, for example?
We care very, very deeply about like protecting our merchants from fraud and risk, and different parts of like the organization would own the different implementations of that, right? So how we approach that from a trust and security perspective would look different from how it's approached in our app ecosystem, where you're dealing with like the developer side of our app marketplace. And then it would look probably different for our capital products as well as for Shop, but absolutely care about it. It's a big focus for us to continuously improve against, like not just this year, but as part of our mission. Yeah.
But the great thing about Shopify is I can be a merchant, and Shopify can take care of all of these advanced analytics and models, and I'm just a merchant, basically.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Our goal is to like take the burden off the merchant for a lot of administrative and toil tasks, so that they can put their focus back on their business where it belongs. The most important things we want them thinking about.
Yeah. I don't have to build or buy my own recommender model and all of these things.
Oh, absolutely. And we also have a pretty rich like app ecosystem. So if there's like pieces of enhancement that they want to bring into their own store that they build off of our core platform, they can do pretty easy like plug and play from our app store, from third party like developers that'll give them extended capabilities for unique use cases they might have.
By the way, in e-commerce, we talk a lot about recommenders, but I have to say in e-commerce, to me, the most important thing is search, because in fact, the reason I bring that up is recently there was an article that was on the top of Hacker News. Basically, the headline of the article is essentially Google is broken. But if you read it, it's the examples they cite is if you want to search for a product in Google, all of the results are ads, right? So
yes, I got you. Well, I would say too that like
search for commerce, consumer search is really in some ways more important than a recommender, right? Because if they know what they're looking for, you want to give them good search, right?
Yeah, like yes and no, right? Because like I think the assumption that people know what they're looking for is like not the whole picture. Like large populations of like users also like don't really have a clear sense of what they're looking for, and like this doesn't exclude the fact that like search is incredibly like important, but like discovery systems in general, I think is what we're talking about, because I don't know if even throughout my career I've ever really thought of search as like fundamentally different from a recommender system in how you leverage like search and how you like approach results ranking. You're making recommendations, right?
Right. But so this is another benefit obviously for a merchant, right? is that all of that is
Yes,
taken care of,
yes.
right? So
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So we wanted to talk about data storytelling, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, how would you describe? So how would you define data storytelling? So is data storytelling for you so central that you would put it in a job description?
I think so. I
Yeah.
do. I think it's like a fundamental capacity that data scientists don't just need today, even though it may be more critical today, but have always like needed, right? I think it's an essential skill. Um, when I think about like why it's essential is because I think the objective of any conversion of data to information is to make it actionable. And the easiest and best and clearest way you can do that is to tell the compelling story that is typically associated with it, right? Um, I think it helps inform decision making in just like more personal, immediate, and connected like ways than running a report, potentially like extracting a couple of key data points and surfacing those to a partner or a stakeholder or a colleague is just I don't find them like I don't find it as useful as when you can tell the fuller story, the bigger picture around the why.
So how would you? So it's interesting that you actually bring this up because as I look back in the early days of data science, the concept and the
Mm,
profession in the
yeah.
mid-aughts in 2004, actually most of the early manifestations and archetypes of data scientists were these storytellers, Ben Fry and these people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
But we
remember
got away
like
from
so
that, right? We got away from that, right?
do you
A
think
little.
so? I think it's I don't think that it's like specifically changed because like you will remember this for sure. Like when you if you would look up what is a data scientist, you would actually see like a Venn diagram of like four different like disciplines that were requirements for like a successful like data scientist like persona, right? And like a key part of that was like arts. And it's not just in like the communication piece. The communication piece is actually critical. You can do the most exceptional analysis. And if you're incapable of communicating it effectively to the person you want to like influence or inform with that data point, if I can reduce it that way, it's not only ineffective, it could be dangerous. So the communication piece is clearly central here, which is the cleanest connection back up to data storytelling. But the other really important piece of it is like the visual aspect of it, right? Because like this is a pedagogical activity that we engage every day. We want to like teach and inform, and having the different being comfortable with preparing different modalities of that analysis is central. So the data visualization piece, is that clear? Is it informing? Is the communication piece clear and informing? And then clearly on the technical side, like, can we trust this thing, right?
So two things. First is a
Yeah.
pet peeve for structured data. For structured data, I think and I fall under this trap too, right? So if you have a bunch of structured data and you wanna
Right.
show something to someone, honestly, most of the time a bar chart is the best chart. But then,
Of course.
you feel like I gotta mix it up, gotta throw in some other kind of chart, which is less effective. So that's the first point. Second thing
But I'll
that
interrupt you there for a
yeah,
minute.
sure, yeah.
Like, there's nothing about data storytelling that like invites the overcomplexification of the data, the visual representation of that data, right? So it's like the storytelling demands clarity, right? So
Yeah,
if a
yeah,
bar
yeah. No,
chart is what communicate, yeah.
but it's kind of human tendency. Like I always always show bar charts. Let's mix it up, even though it's not, even though the bar
I'm
chart is
with
still the best, right?
I'm with you. I grew up with like Tufty though, so like I I orient toward like simplicity, but like I think there's also a difference between the kinds of visual communication that data storytelling as a craft, and it is a part of the data science craft, invites, and infographics, which is a very different like medium. Some data scientists have to engage with that, right? But informatics in and of itself, or infographics, sorry, is like can be overladen, but I don't know if I've seen a lot of like excess in terms of like charting for like, at least at like at Shopify, like data visualization, representations. We
Yeah.
try and be very clear.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I think sometimes we overthink these things, right? So,
Yeah.
the second thing I wanted to bring up as you were talking, I just this is something that I've been thinking a lot about, is that like I said, in the early days, we emphasize a lot about the data storytelling and visualization. Fast forward to today, we're really things get a little more challenging, because now we have computer vision, images, video, and unstructured text a lot more, and the models for both of those, the machine learning models have gotten so good that it's much easier for data teams to work with those two types of data.
Right.
But it's really much harder to do any kind of store, because all our charting tools are optimized for structured data, right? So so you have to build and kind of roll your own visualization tools for unstructured data. I mean, for text, we all revert to like the tag or the word cloud, right?
No. But like to your point, we could, we totally could. Oh, like that's interesting. So I think when I think of where data stories are most impactful is helping to support decision making. I think like where unstructured data you want, I think of it as very, very like separate problem, because with unstructured data, the motivation is less to tell a coherent story around like the unstructured data. The motivation is to explore it, right? So like the visualization tools would like give you affordances for storytelling, some opportunities for like organization, but like when I'm talking about data storytelling, I'm like, I need to help like my product partner make a good decision. I need to help my business be informed on something that's like changing in like our world, right? I'm probably not looking at a whole bunch of unstructured data to like give them that. Yeah.
I mean, one thing that people do is they turn unstructured data to structured information, right? So the classic information extraction, and then you can, for example, for text, then you can run reports, you can surface trending terms and topics.
And then I see what you're saying.
And then the other thing that people do, at least for vision, so this doesn't actually exist in the wild. I've only seen a friend of mine has a great tool for being able to surface outliers and things like this. So in other words, when you're building a computer vision model, you can immediately figure out what sort of images will cause you problems, right? So
right. Okay.
But maybe it does not fall into the province of data storytelling, but maybe we should kind of push our tools towards being able to tell people at a high level what's going on in this repository of images, right? So what are some patterns that can surface, right? So
I don't think it's like completely like outside of like the space of data storytelling, but data storytelling as a field, like I've not seen it like take on those particular challenges. It's basically like it's a presentation model for data, most specifically, right? For communicating that to potentially like non-technical audiences, like as a specific part of it, right?
So the other topic I wanted to talk to you about is MLOps, and you've kind of touched upon it earlier, in the sense that your data science folks are kind of expected to productionize their work.
Yeah.
So does that mean then that you folks have, I guess this implies that you have the tools for them to do that, but
Mhm.
then do you have also the tools that allow them to do all of the experiment management and tracking so that 6 months down the road they can understand what they did and all of that,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
so do you think that MLOps in some ways if you give data scientists the right tools, uh, they can actually uh, do more than what most people expect. Because most people expect data scientists to hand off their work, right?
I would hope not.
Yeah,
Um, I wouldn't work at a company that did that, quite frankly. I think it's like a real disadvantage to like our field.
there's also
Um,
most companies exist in that category.
I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's healthy for like the culture you want to build, and I don't think
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
healthy for the craft. The slippage over areas of ownership, I think, are incredibly generative for like our field. And so why I feel passionately about this, I'll loop it back to like the MLOps piece, is that fundamentally, like outside of all the interesting observability pieces, that it helps us do our job better because we can see things that change and we can address those like quite quickly. All of that is like super special, and I think a really important part of MLOps. But the biggest like change it gives to like our disciplines, and I think like especially in something like machine learning, it's always going to be this connected space between engineering and data science. It gives us like real senses of like ownership. I mean, there's a reason it's called ops. It's like it's a derivative of DevOps, right? Which isn't just like how you work and the tools you have to like work with. It's like the sensibility you have around the things you build. So for DevOps, the kind of trope around that is like you build it, you own it. And I love to see that being like pushed back to the machine learning and data science fields, right? Because when you prototype a model and you throw it over the fence to engineering to like optimize and like own improvements on, you become so disconnected from like the effects, the very, very real and material like effects your work has on the people using the application that it's plugged into. And like, I think that that makes us like a desensitized craft. Like, it actually terrifies me. It makes us make bad decisions. It makes us not like understand the real world impacts of what we're building. When I'm connected to like the product that a model is like being surfaced like through, and that includes the observability piece of MLOps, of course. Like I've become a more responsible citizen, to be frank. Like I feel so strongly that this is critical for our field.
Yeah, and it seems like a data scientist, uh, i- if the team is properly constituted and deployed,
Mm-hmm.
they're closer to the
Yep.
line. They're closer to the line of business. They know the data better because they talk to the
Yep.
business owners. And
Yep.
honestly, we're getting to the point where the knowledge of business domain and the data is going to be a lot more important because honestly, I mean, you can you
Totally
can
right.
you can use you can use some kind of auto ML tool to
Yeah.
get you to that first model. It's understanding what to build and
Yep.
what the right inputs are. That's going to be
Yeah.
key. Yeah.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. Like I do think that like organizations, I definitely see it at Shopify, and I don't think we're like unique here, that the idea that having domain experts building for like these areas is incredibly critical, right? And it even changes, like doubling down on like the domain expertise. It even changes like how we approach like modeling that data. And I don't mean like from a machine learning perspective. I mean from like, you know, a domain modeling perspective, from how we think of like that world. It's making that also mean like using how we collect, store, and understand like events across our platform, right? As domain entities versus uh, disconnected, grouped, or concepts. Yeah.
So another topic I wanted to discuss briefly with you is responsible AI, which in my mind is an umbrella term for managing risk associated with data and ML. So this could be privacy and security, fairness, bias, interpretability, and so on. In fact, in an hour, I'm going to talk to some people at the US NIST, National Institute of Science and Standards and Technology. They're about to come out with a risk management framework for ML. But so responsible AI, one way to think of it is we can tie it back to MLOps in the sense that, how do we inject software engineering rigor and more to how we build data and AI ML products, right? So what is the equivalent of unit testing, integration testing, validation, staging, and shadowing, and all of the things that software people take for granted, that may not be quite in the DNA of data teams and data science teams. But it sounds like you folks probably do all of that already, right? So you have various ways of testing and validating models, and some teams, by the way, Wendy, even have like separate teams for this team will build the model, this team will test the model, right? So
like that's almost like the equivalent in engineering of having a QA team versus like integrated like testing. So it's like,
because data scientists might know how to probe things more rigorously, right? So, but then you don't want them to be the same ones probing the same model.
I've maybe like the answer to really remove like the bias around it is to like have that tooled. So I'll say like for Shopify, we're a test-driven development environment, and that that inflects not just how engineers build, it inflects how data science builds, and how we coach and grow that craft in our organization. So integrated testing into our data models is a part of like the process. And then I think the extra support comes from I think two spaces. We have an in-house experimentation platform and an in-house machine learning platform that also handles the experiment platform lets you like run and like measure difference, but our machine learning platform does that at like the feature level, right? So we can see drift between like features, observe it, and address it, especially if it's impactful to the products we're building around that. But I think the biggest differentiator for Shopify is that test-driven development culture that is applied equally to like all of our crafts at Shopify. So I think our data scientists benefit from that culture. It is very new for them. And quite frankly, it's new to a lot of engineers who come in who are used to having QA kind of separate, or laxity around integrated testing. Yeah.
And finally, the last topic I wanted to ask you about, and I don't know if actually you're involved with this at your company, but one thing that I think that we talk a lot about ML and data science as a community, but one of the things that I think is also powerful that is somewhat underinvested. It's changing a little bit. There's now a few startups building tools for companies. Is experimentation, right? So many companies in tech, Shopify, Netflix, Google, Facebook, they have these really sophisticated Booking.com, sophisticated experimentation platforms, so that teams in the company can run experiments, and then there'll be a catalog of what experiment has been done in the past, and so on and so forth. Those tools tend to be bespoke because they have to be really tied to the infrastructure. But now with the rise of these modern data platforms around cloud warehouses and lakehouses, it seems like I'm seeing some startups building tools that companies can use, and it just seems like it's one area where I think people underestimate the power of what an experimentation platform and culture, what competitive advantage that can bring. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with the problem that that not even like cloud solutions, but any external solution for experimentation like needs to solve for is the perceived cost of running that experiment to a business unit or a product team, right? I think that's a big, I mean, it's both a technical challenge, but as well as an education challenge. And then the other piece, like for me, is like being able to like do proper estimates of like impact of the particular experiment you want to run. So at Shopify, we're deeply like merchant centric, and we do not want to run like dark pattern experiments or experiments that may have a high probability of causing a negative impact on our merchant experience because it's their livelihoods. And so if there was tooling that allowed us to predict that really well in advance, I think that would be super useful. And like, I'm actually thinking about like this because like, well, Shopify has an internal experimentations platform, but a couple of companies ago I was at a startup and we ended up having to build like an in-house solution, which seems odd for a startup because you typically don't want to do that kind of investment. You want to buy something, but the kind of data we were working with was continuous and no off-the-shelf solutions. Like, let us actually like experiment on continuous data. So that was like really interesting. So that's like, I think something like maybe that's more domain specificity. Off-the-shelf solutions just don't ever seem sufficient for scale or for the types of like data you need to handle for experimentation processes. Like it's very conversion based. And like I find that of limited use.
This is why Wendy. This is why it's interesting for entrepreneurs and startups, right? Because I feel like ML and MLOps is so over invested. There's so many startups, right?
There's a lot now, but like if I were to explore them, I wonder like how many of them are actually like doing it super effectively, right? Like I have like my heart in a couple of like companies who I think were like first out of the gate, like Arise AI, who are exceptional at what they do and really brought experience from other like very large scale companies into the machine learning observability like problem. Like another company I'm super interested in, it's not ML specific, but Honeycomb. Like I think there's like kind of like there's companies who really grok the observability space and how you can apply it to different domains.
Oh yeah, just in that area in ML, there's I probably know 10 to 20 startups. Yeah. And so yeah, my point is that maybe it's time for data people to look elsewhere. not I think ML, we're still in the early stages of ML. There's lots of opportunities, but let's not underinvest in other areas, right? So
well, I totally agree with you there. I think we need wide impact and our voices. Like, I mean, we essentially can hand them people who are interested in starting up new ventures, we can hand them a wide platter of problems we would like tooling to solve for us. Observability is one of them. Experimentation is a big one where I think we're always at like a deficit in many other areas. So
and as we pointed out, storytelling for the unstructured data world, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, like when I'm thinking back on you raising that too, I'm like in the past when we've done that kind of work, you build like these artisanal like solutions, like so there's some libraries that can handle being able to visualize that quite well. And like there's for instance, I can't remember the name of like the TensorFlow like visualization tool that's actually really, really good at that. But I think that one's free too.
Yes. Yeah. And with that, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Ben. That's such a good conversation. Really appreciate your time.